page 16 of the Wordsworth edition of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Carew murder case. About halfway down through the first paragraph on page 16, I'm reading this quote, and then I'm going to explain why I think it's important. And then all of a sudden he broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping with his foot, brandishing the cane, and carrying on, as the maid described it, like a madman. The old gentleman took a step back, with the air of one very much surprised and a trifle hurt. And at that, Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds and clubbed him to the earth. And the next moment, with ape-like fury, he was trampling his victim underfoot and hailing down a storm of blows, under which the bones were audibly shattered, and the body jumped upon the roadway. At the horror of these sights and sounds, the maid fainted. So we're learning the story of the murder of this very important and kindly man, Mr. Carew. And we see, firstly, a few things. That Hyde appears to sort of trample on this man for no reason whatsoever. There's no cause behind it. It's completely and utterly senseless. I think that's important, you know. Hyde's got no ulterior motives. He's not trying to protect Jekyll in any way, or himself. He's just wandering around like a kind of a lighted fuse that could go off and explode any moment. Wonderful use of commas here. Notice what happens is it's in indirect speech, and so it's not the maid speaking in a sort of perhaps a more working class dialect. We have the writer describing it, and we have the flame of anger, comma, stamping with his foot, comma, brandishing the cane and carrying on like a madman. The gentleman took a step back, comma, with the air of one very much surprised and a trifle hurt, semicolon. And at that, Hyde broke out of all bounds, comma, and clubbed him to the earth. So that he builds up a powerful sense of rhythm through the commas, and that last, he leaves the most powerful section to that last bit of the sentence, clubbed him to the earth. And the next moment, with ape-like fury, comma, he was trampling his victim underfoot and hailing us down a storm of blows, under which the bones were audibly shattered and a body jumped upon the roadway. So what we have is the commas, ape-like fury, comma, trampling underfoot, comma, a storm of blows, comma, and then this long clause, which the rhythm of which is much faster, and he uses a word called shattered. Now, it's not technically onomatopoeia, it's not, but it has the quality of giving us a sense of the sound, don't we? Shatter. So I don't know. You need to think about it. I personally find that it's a very evocative sound word that gives us a sense of this old man's bones being crushed to bits, and they're audibly, so you can hear it. If you're audible, it can be heard very easily. And the body jumped upon the roadway, and the maid faints. It's probably the most horrific description in the book, and a powerful one. I think more powerful because it's utterly senseless, isn't it? There's no reason why he's doing this whatsoever. We never really quite understand, other than that he is like a child, sort of stamping on his toys. I see Hyde as quite childlike, but you need to come up with your own interpretation. Why do you think he does this? Stevenson never gives us any answers. It's interesting in many of the films and play versions, you know, Hyde is often given more sort of psychological motives as to why he does things, or more specific reasons, but not in the book. Stevenson's leaving that open. Think about why that's the case. Okay, page 617, top of the page. Mr. Utterson had already quailed at the name Hyde, but when the stick was laid before him, he could doubt it no longer. Broken and battered as it was, he recognised it for the one he himself presented many years to Henry Jekyll. "Is this Mr. Hyde a person of small stature?" he inquired. "Particularly small and particularly wicked-looking is what the maid calls him," said the officer. So we now have more of a detective story coming into place. The stick that he beat the old man with, that was left there broken, is Henry Jekyll's. And then we have this lovely description of the twilight in not twilight, the kind of fogs. His third paragraph. It was by this time about 9 in the morning, in the first fog of the season. A great chocolate-coloured pall lowered over heaven, but the wind was continually charging and routing these embattled vapours, so that as the cab crawled from street to street, Mr. Utterson beheld a marvellous numbers of degrees and hues of twilight, for here it would be dark at like the back end of evening, and there would be a glow of rich, lurid brown, like the light of some conflagration, and here for a moment the fog would be quite broken up, and a haggard shaft of daylight would glance in between the swirling reeds. So, very evocative description of this chocolate brown fog swirling around in the morning and making it feel like it's twilight, making it feel like it's the evening and hardly daylight breaking through. So we've got this kind of very evocative description of the city, this horrid, frightening, claustrophobic city where people are just stamped to death for no reason. And we're in London, in Soho, in the kind of alleyways there. Some people might argue that he's more describing what Edinburgh was like, that he knew well, but you need to make a decision about this. And then we have more description in the third paragraph. I love the descriptions in this book. They're very powerful. As the cab drew up before the address indicated, the fog lifted a little and showed him a dingy street, a gin palace, a low French eating shop, a shop for retail of penny numbers and 2-penny salads, and many ragged children huddled in the doorways, and many women of different nationalities passing out, key in hand, to have a morning glass. And the next moment the fog settled down again upon that part as brown as umber and cut him off from his blackguardy surroundings. This was the home of Henry Jekyll's favourite, a man who was the heir to £250,000 sterling. So this grotty, poverty-stricken place with women milling around, getting a morning glass of drink, of alcohol, these ragged children. This is the place where Hyde lives, the favourite of Jekyll. More evocative descriptions. And then page 18, very powerful visual imagery once again when they break into the flat of Henry Jekyll, and this is what they find is sort of middle of page 18. At this moment, however, the rooms bore every mark of being recently and hurriedly ransacked. Clothes lay about the floor with their pockets inside out, lock-fast drawers stood open, and on the heath there lay a pile of grey ashes, as though many papers had been burned. For these embers the inspector disinterred the butt end of a green cheque-book which had resisted the action of a fire, and the other half of the stick was found behind the door. As this clinched his suspicions, the officer declared himself delighted. A visit to the bank, where several £1,000s were found to be lying to the murderer's credit, completed his gratification. "You depend upon it, sir," he told Mr. Utterson. "I have him in my hand. He may have lost his head, or he never would have left the stick, and above all burned the cheque-book. Why, money's life to the man. We have nothing to do but wait for him at the bank and get out handbills." So the detective story continues, and we find the other half of the stick that was broken in the process of killing Carew in the flat. And we also find that he's got this thousands of pounds in the bank to his credit. So when we look retrospectively, having read the book, we realise that Jekyll is providing a lot of money for Hyde to enjoy himself, and that suggests that Jekyll, well, we know, don't we, later on, Jekyll actually enjoys what he does in the guise of Hyde. And we have in this more building of suspense, don't we? And I want you to make your notes on this, how the writer builds suspense in this chapter, because we have the horrible murder, don't we? Even worse than what he did to the child. He's been building up to this, the same sort of thing of trampling on someone. We have the very powerful descriptions of London and the brown fog and the place where the house is and the flat is, and then we have this wonderful description of the ransacked flat and the sense of a mystery of someone who's just disappeared utterly. We also have a sense that Hyde is going to be caught very soon, don't we? That sooner or later he'll come back and he'll just get caught. Of course, that it doesn't quite work out like that. But I want you to think about the way in which Stevenson uses description to build suspense, description of a city, uses dialogue to build suspense, discussion between the inspector and Utterson. He uses indirect speech to build suspense, doesn't he? Remember the maid does it. He uses powerful imagery to build suspense. All of these things, but also all of your thoughts too. What grips you about the chapter? What's fascinating about it?